So in today's video, I wanted to talk about the NBA coming back here on Thursday. Really excited for that to finally get some sports back. Baseball started a few days ago. I'm not big into baseball though, and baseball's already having some issues as the Florida Marlins have 17 players on the team that got the COVID virus now and a couple of coaches. But the NBA has been doing a bubble, which is different than baseball. Baseball is still playing different areas. The NBA is playing all their games in Florida and to kind of keep a bubble playing at one area and like all the sports snow fans and stuff. But yeah, in today's video, I just basically want to talk about this as I'm really excited to get basketball back up and going and hopeful that they can actually finish the season. So the NBA bubble is just kind of interesting. Basically, they're taking the 22 teams, 13 from the West and 9 from the East. Normally, you have 16 teams in the playoffs, 8 from both the East and the West. But basically, instead of doing that because of how much time has been lost, and whatnot, is normally we'd be well into the off season by now, and had the season completed already. But we haven't because of the virus, of course. But yeah, in this, the 22 teams, like I said, East 9, West 13. Basically, what they're doing is the teams that are kind of somewhat in the playoff hunt but aren't there are getting a chance to kind of compete and try to make the playoffs with potentially a situation where they can, if they're close enough, they can kind of get a chance to play and maybe the last playoff spot. Now, what's interesting about this too is that teams are getting to play 8 games here to finish their regular season. Teams originally actually had about 17, 18 games left when things went on hiatus. So you're losing around 10 games or so per team. But I believe part of this too was that if teams play a certain amount of games, then I think they match some sort of requirement that teams need to get the full like revenue for TV contracts or something like that. Not exactly sure. But in the East, basically you have the Bucks, then you got Raptors, Celtics, Heat, Pacers, Sixers, Nets, Magic, and Wizards in that order currently for 1 through 9. In the West, the 13 teams you have are the Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets, Mavericks, Grizzlies, Portland Trail Blazers, New Orleans Pelicans, Sacramento Kings, San Antonio Spurs, and the Phoenix Suns. Now, when you look at this too, one of the questions I have is with teams only having 8 games or so left, or with teams only playing 8 games, and the fact that not every team had played the exact amount of games, what happens if 2 teams end up with the same amount of wins, but one team had played one more game because of previously because before the shutdown type of thing. I'm not sure if because of that they're just going to simply go by winning percentage, even though it's a little bit unfair. But I can't really think of too much else or what they would do. Now, the other thing that's interesting with this, like I said, is with the fact that some of the teams have a chance to kind of play the way in, if you will, is that basically those bottom teams, if they finish within, I believe it's 4 games of the eighth seed, they'll get some sort of chance to play the way in for a playoff seed. Now, I don't know if that simply means that if they're within like the 4 or 5 games or whatever, by the time those 8 games are done, if that means that they will play the team that's above them at eighth and basically have like a best of 3 or one and done to kind of decide who gets that eighth seed to get up to the playoffs. Now, I'm going to put in the description an article here that kind of describes a lot of this, as it's a lot to go over, being that we're in a situation where the schedule and just the way everything is working is so different than normal. But yeah, here it is, I believe, when it comes to, like I said, the playoff thing. Um, so yeah, it's the 6 teams in terms of the bubble teams that normally wouldn't be playing if you just went with the 8 in both. You have the 6 teams that were 6 games or fewer behind the eighth seed in their respective conference, and that was the teams I mentioned, which are the Pelicans, Trailblazers, Suns, Kings, Spurs, and Wizards. Now, the bubbles you have in here are how basically things are going to work in terms of testing, the protocols for the testing, and such. Now, also another thing that's worth mentioning is some of the players that would normally be playing have decided not to. For the, for example, the Pacers, Victor Oladipo at one point said he wasn't going to play. He had been coming back from a bad injury. He had only played not too many games this year. I think like 10 or something, maybe 20. I'm not sure exactly, but he hadn't played a lot and said he may not want to risk it. However, he was playing in a scrimmages. They did some scrimmage games first, so it makes me think that he will indeed actually play. And I really hope Victor Oladipo does, because the Pacers are a good team and are deep. And if he can play and get back to being close to our star level or anything like that, they might be able to pull some upsets and make things even more interesting in the playoffs, Eastern Conference playoffs, than they are right now. As the East is already kind of a toss-up in terms of, who can maybe give the Bucks the best shot. Because when you look at the East, there's a lot of good talent there and a lot of even kind of talent. But the season starts, as I said, July 30th. When you look at the schedule right now, it's looking like, unless they just haven't updated things completely, but it's looking like the regular season will basically end on August 14th. And then that means the playoffs would probably start somewhere around August 18th, 17th, somewhere around there. Personally, looking at that means I'll probably take a vacation week or two from work around then. I've been doing that the last several years so I can watch the playoffs. It's just normally that's in mid-April, not mid-August, but again, that's where this year's been. And yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how this all works. Now, when you look, trying to find again the play-in tournament. Okay, so here's the bubble schedule and kind of the play-in tournament or whatever. It said there will also be a play-in tournament for the number 8 seed if either conference seed in either conference, but only if the number 9 seed is fewer than 4 games behind the standings. Otherwise, the number 8 seed will be safe in the bracket and basically make the playoffs. In a play-in tournament for the number 8 seed, the current 8th number seed would need to defeat the number 9 seed once, and the number 9 seed would need to defeat the number 8 seed 2 games in a row. So it basically sounds like they would play each other. If the 8th seed wins, then they're good. If not, they play another game, which then would become a do or die for both teams, sort of thing. So in a sense, for the number 9 seed, it would become like a bet. It would be basically they'd have to win 2 in a row, and the 8th seed they would just have to win one of those 2. And they would be good, is what it sounds like. It's the NBA Finals, Game 7, if it gets to that point, would be around October 12th. I say around because there's still a chance they can maybe, switch things up a little bit because of how compact and different the schedule's been. But the other thing about this that's interesting too is that when you look at the standings and everything, when I mentioned the fact that if the 8th seeded team, if they're within 4 games of the number 9, or if the number 9 seed is within type of thing is within 4 games, how they could get that kind of matchup or whatever to try to get to the 8th seed kind of thing, to represent the 8th seed in the playoffs. When you look at it, for example, in the East, the 9th seed right now is currently the Washington Wizards. They're 24-40. The Magic are the 8th at 30-35. That means when you look at the Wizards right now, played 64 games. The Magic have played 65. So the Magic have played 1 more. They also have 6 more wins. So really, they have about 5.5 game lead. So when you look at that, in order for the Wizards to have a chance, they would have to basically make up like a game and a half during these 8 games. And they're going to be without Bradley Beal, who's one of the bigger names that is not playing, that decided to sit out. I don't know exactly why he sat out, but he is sitting out. So I don't know if that will happen. Then you look, the other thing that's interesting is kind of like I mentioned about if teams have the same amount of wins and one team's played more or whatever, is the Nets right now are currently a half a game ahead of Magic for the 7th seed, as they've have the same amount of wins at 30, but they've lost 34 games compared to the Magic, who have lost 35. Then you look at Philly and Indy. They have the same record right now. Indy apparently has a tiebreaker, though, as they are the 5th seed and Philly is the 6th. Then you look at Miami and Boston Boston at 3, Miami at 4, Toronto 2, and Milwaukee 1. Now, when it comes to who can give the Bucks the best run in the East, I kind of have a few thoughts on that. Raptors are second in the East, but I feel like Toronto's overachieved this year, big time. And outside of Siakam, who is having a really good year on the Raptors and who have been impressed by a lot the last few years, I don't really know if they have a second guy that you can really always count on. Boston Celtics, I feel like, might be the best chance to beat the Bucks. The Celtics, I thought last year, were a big disappointment. Kemba Walker's on this team this year. They actually lost some other guys talent-wise. I'd say they actually have a little less talent than last year, but I think the chemistry is better. And Gordon Hayward, has been playing better this year, so I like those chances. Miami, at number 4, they're really good. They're very deep, but they're also really young. They do have Jimmy Butler, who has experience, but as a whole, they're a very young team. I kind of feel like they're 1 year away type of thing, that they need to just kind of get this postseason experience out the way and the young players to kind of develop more, and then they might have a shot. The Pacers, like I mentioned, Victor Oladipo is the big question. And then you got the 76ers. The 76ers might be the team that I'm leaning towards. I still kind of feel like the Celtics because of the way they played. Philly's been very up and down, but at the same time, the big thing with Philly is that Philly has been great at home, but they've sucked on the road. Now, they don't have to deal with, playing on the road, really, basically. They don't have that disadvantage, I should say, because we're in a situation where all games are being played at the same place. You don't have fans, so they don't have to really deal with the road disadvantage and not having that home court. So that makes, I think, Philly have a much better chance to upset the Bucks. I'm actually kind of thinking that the Bucks will get upset now. So in the East, if I had to bet on who's going to come out, I'd probably go with the Celtics. But I also think Philly's got a good chance. But if I had to, I'd go with the Celtics. Now, in the West, I'm kind of worried about my Lakers. The Lakers have the number 1 seed most likely. They will most likely, end with the number 1 seed. Again, we don't have home field, but seeding still does matter because of matchups. Right now, if you looked in the West, the Lakers currently in the first round will be playing Memphis Grizzlies. Now, I think they'd have no trouble with them. Then, in the second round, if things are kind of where they are and stay where they are or whatever, you would perhaps have to play either Utah or Oklahoma City. Utah has a key guy out, too, from the bubble, and Boban. If I'm saying his name right. I always forget how to pronounce his name. But he's a guy that can shoot the 3, scores like 20 points a game. The Utah Jazz, before the season started, I thought they could be a championship contender. There for a while, they were kind of disappointing me. They did start turning on before the lockout, though. But without that guy, I don't see him being able to compete. The only teams I really see that can compete in the West are the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Nuggets. But at the same time, the Lakers have beat the Nuggets a couple times this year already in Denver, too, which is never easy to do. And the Clippers, I think, have the most talent in all of the NBA. When you look at their roster, they're basically deep at every single position. And what worries me about my Lakers is that with Avery Bradley not being there because he's sitting out he has like a 6-year-old kid or something that has some sort of pre-existing health issues, and so he's sitting out because of that, which I understand. Of course, health is always more important in the games. But with him out, and then Rondo also got hurt, and because of that, that hurts the Lakers' depth. And as a result, you're probably going to have either J.R. Smith play a lot or Dion Waiters, and I don't really want either of them being out on the court much. I don't feel good having either of them out on the court. J.R. Smith is older. He had been out of the league for like a couple of years when the Lakers picked him up here recently, and he had already showed a pretty decent decline when he did last play. So I mean, considering he had already shown a decent decline when he last played, and that it had been a couple years, I just don't think he's that good anymore. And then Dion Rafers always seemed to be a very up and down guy, just not that consistent. So I don't like them having to play a lot. I feel like that puts a lot more pressure on Kyle Kuzma. I think Kyle Kuzma's going to have to play really well if the Lakers are going to win the championship. I think he's going to have to play better than he's played this regular season. I think he's going to have to start giving them like 15, 20 points consistently on good shooting too if the Lakers are going to be able to compete, because I just don't feel like they have enough depth to beat a Clipper team if, all things are even outside those, players being out for the Lakers. Because it sounds like the Clippers are mostly going to be, at least going in, are going to have their depth, basically. Not going to have a lot of guys out. So that's kind of my thought there with the Lakers and Clippers. If I had to pick, I think I'd actually go with the Clippers, even though I like the Lakers. Because they're my team, but I do feel like the Clippers have the better team. And, like I said, no home court, although they're both LA teams, so it wouldn't really be much of a home court anyway, but still worth talking about. When you look at the seedings, like I said too, it does still matter for matchups. And most likely when you look at the matchups, or when you look at the seeding in the East, the 1, the 2 are pretty much set. Toronto could actually fall back, technically. Still, Boston could catch them, only 3 games back. Milwaukee's basically got that locked up, though, in terms of getting the 1 seed. They only have to win like a game, and they would out of like the 8 basically, and they'd have things clinched. Or maybe 2. So they're pretty much set there. Boston and Miami, that'll be interesting to see. Can Miami catch Boston? Indy and Philly at 5 and 6. They might be able to get up to 4. I'd say it's very unlikely to get to 3. Just not a lot of games to make a 4-game difference in. Make a 4-game difference in 8 games would be a lot. They'd have to win as well as have a team like Boston lose a lot. Philly and Indy are most likely to be somewhere between 4 and 6. 7 and 8 is pretty close. Then you look at the Western Conference, like I said, the Lakers have the 1 basically locked up. Denver's not far behind the Clippers, though, for the 2, so it'll be interesting. Does that flip-flop the 2 with the Clippers and the Nuggets? Can the Nuggets get to the 2? Utah, like I said, have been playing better and at 4, but I don't know if they can get up now with having Boban out. Oklahoma City Thunder are 5, tied with the Rockets. Now, can Thunder get up at 4? Thunder have been one of the bigger surprises this year. I would say that probably this finish at. I'm gonna say they get up to 4. I'm gonna say that the Jazz drop, the Thunder go up, and the Rockets are currently 6. Now the Rockets are not the deepest team. The defense under D'Antoni, I don't expect it to be good because it pretty much never is. There was 1 year where it almost was, and that was the year they almost beat the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs before blowing a 3-1 series lead. But yeah, the Rockets are 6. Now, in a normal circumstance, I think the Rockets would have fallen to 7, and Dallas would have caught them because they have the same amount of wins right now. The Rockets do as Dallas, but they've played 3 less games. Now, with playing 3 less games and this 8-game thing, I don't think they're in a drop. I think the Mavericks will most likely finish at 7 because of that. And then you look at the battle for 8th. When you look at the bubble teams, the Suns right now are the lowest in terms of the bubble teams in the West. They're 6 games back, so they'd have to make up to get a chance maybe. They would have to make up a couple games, as well as leapfrog a couple other teams like the Spurs and the Kings. So it's not just the fact that they'd have to make up a couple games, but the fact they would have to leapfrog a few other teams makes me think that won't happen. Same with like the Spurs at 12. The Kings kind of are like that too. I could see the Pelicans maybe leapfrogging because they'd only have to leapfrog really Portland at this point, who the 1 game behind. Actually, they're not even technically 1 point behind, or yeah, they're not even really like a game behind in a sense too, because they have one less win than Portland, but they played two less games. And the Pelicans, even though the record's not great, I think they're a decent, solid team. A lot of that was Zion Williams not being there at the beginning of the year and the fact that they're young. They had a really bad losing streak earlier in the year. You take that losing streak away, and they could very well be comfortably in like an eighth place type of situation. And maybe even if they had Zion and everything, maybe even be like a sixth seed or something. So the Pelicans, I'm gonna if between Portland and Pelicans, I would pick the Pelicans are more likely to be able to get to that seed, ninth seed, and then maybe have a chance to play the Grizzlies. I don't know if they'll make full on make up to not have to at least play in a that situation where they have to win two games in a row against them. Now I kind of like that idea too with this bubble that if you're gonna do the ninth team has a chance to play and get into the eighth. I kind of do like the fact that they have to win two games in a row where the eighth team only has to win one. I kind of like that because being that they're the ninth team and that if you're gonna give them a chance to make it with actually having like a worse record in a sense, then I think it's only fair to basically make it tougher on them by them having to win two compared to only having to win one. So I like that idea. But yeah, these are just kind of my thoughts about this. I'm really excited for the NBA to get started. Right now, I'm leaning towards it being a Clipper Celtic final, but I'm hoping my Lakers can make it. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how this works in terms of not having fans and everything, too. Um, and just hoping it will work. Really need some positivity in this year. But the other thing I'm curious to find out about is what players exactly aren't in a participate in this because I've heard a list of some of them, but there could be some that I haven't heard. I guess that's just one of those things I'll start finding out when I watch games, unless I see more about it. I did see the Lakers Clippers, which is one of the games on Thursday. I did see the Clippers are going to be without two guys. They'll be out without Lou Williams, who for some stupid reason basically went to a strip club and got food. He said that he basically was just trying to get food, but it's like who goes to a strip club just for food type of thing. That he wasn't really there to like see the strippers kind of thing. They was just simply picking up dinner. Just silly. And then Haslam, I believe it is. It's getting late here. I probably should have done this video a little sooner. But Harold, Marcus Harold, key big guy off the Clippers bench who's having a great year. He's going to be out for that game. So it's kind of unfortunate that the Clipper-Laker game we're going to have several key guys out for both teams. Lakers with their injuries, plus the guys sitting out, and then because of the bubble situation with the Clippers and guys that will join them later. But that's why it's hard to predict these things too, because teams don't have 8 games left. These 8 games, as well as the scrimmages they do, are kind of for guys to get back into shape, and because the bubble situation and the fact that some players might have to sit out at the beginning because they were having a quarantine or whatever. I don't know how much that's going to affect potentially if they lose an extra game or win an extra game and where that might, fall in the standings and everything. But yeah, just if you're interested in the NBA and looking forward to it as much as I am, comment down below, and as always, subscribe to this video. I might start doing some more videos here now that sports is starting up on that to go with my video game streams. Not sure when I'm going to play Ghost of Tsushima again. I skipped tonight. I was doing some other things. It got late. And might not have time tomorrow either. As I may be hanging out with a friend. And then Thursday, basketball starts up. And so that'll most likely take up a good portion of that night between watching the 2 games after I get off work. So I might get on late Thursday night. But if not, it may not even be till Saturday. So I'm not really sure. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.